Wait, I'm not ready. I'm just joking.
Too late.
Wait.
And that about wraps it up for us.
Yes, thanks for coming, everybody. It was a short session. So we're really glad that everybody's here watching right now. I'm really joyful to be with Sonja and Stephen, dear friends. Before we get started, we kind of agreed that what we wanted everyone to know was why we're doing this and what it was born from. It came out of our casual conversation of not having spoken for a long time, and we're close friends. So we said, well, that's crazy. Let's Zoom. So a few days ago, we Zoomed and we got into what we all have in common anyway, which is, what is this, all the coronavirus and what's going on with humanity and what all of this is really about? And we just got into some really deep conversation, but from our individual perspectives. Sonja's from her astrology and Stephen from his wisdom and intelligence about history and wisdom and business, and mine from working with people transformatively one-on-one through awakening consciousness. And that's what we all have in common, is this heartfelt sense of wanting to support humanity's awakening in consciousness. So we said, hey, let's do this together. Let's make a video and then share our three perspectives so it can be a broad impact on a lot of people for those that are interested. So that's why we're here. And we were just laughing before we got started and we said, well, we need to get serious. But we said, no, we're not going to do that. We never do that.
Yeah, it's more this way.
So what did I cover it pretty well? Anything I'm missing?
Fantastic. Yeah,
beautiful.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, we just wanted to, actually, we started having this conversation last weekend and we just wanted to continue it and share it with everybody because we thought it was valuable.
And when David says we Zoomed, that means we used the video chat platform Zoom. Doesn't necessarily mean we ran around in the yard. There was some of that here, but
we were Zooming, but we weren't Zooming in that way.
Zooming, yes, in that.
David. All right. So we obviously are very serious, the three of us. So good luck. So let's start with, what do you guys think about me starting with the bios for you all, and then you guys can.
Let's start with introducing each other, and then we'll go into it. Yeah.
Great. And this way, for the viewers that are out there that are all of ours, from our mailing lists and friends and family to those of you that don't know us, this will give you a sense of what each of us bring to this recording. So I'll start with Sonja. Sonja is a certified astrologer and life relationship coach. Her passion is for connecting with people and helping them transform their lives. This led her to train as a life coach in addition to her lifelong study of astrology. She was 3 when she started. She went, Mama,
not quite that young. I was 19.
19, okay, good.
Yeah.
Almost your entire lifelong.
Almost, yeah.
She currently serves dozens of clients across
2 years.
What'd you say?
It's been 2 years. I'm kidding.
2 years that you've, lifelong.
21.
She currently serves dozens of clients across several continents via Skype, FaceTime, Zoom, and the phone. She's also created her own online community, which I would like to put a plug in for in these days and times, to have a community of people you're a part of. Life-changing, really, since we're isolated so much. So she's created her own online community to create a daily support system that helps hundreds of individuals all over the world with their personal evolution. And daily support means daily. So you can have ways to stay in tune with support. So I bow to that part of all of this, Sonja. I want to just add a personal note about Sonja. I knew her when she was 3, and just joking, in terms of personal notes.
Really, yeah.
But what I have loved about knowing Sonja as a friend and in her profession is, in a certain sense, we humans feel like we're these little creatures amidst an intense universe, an immense universe of vast. But the truth is that there is somehow this unified nature of all that is. And so to understand astrology at the level that she does and translates it into the human evolution as much as the solar and the universal evolution, I'm going to use this word twice, one for her and one for Stephen, but she's a wizard or a wizardress at this capacity to be able to translate the cosmic into the personal, and for the purpose, not just to be smart about it, but for the purpose of unveiling personal evolution and consciousness. So that's my personal note about Sonja.
Thank you, David. Yeah.
You're welcome. And Stephen, my Stephen. I love you, Stephen.
What are you going to do? I love you too.
Oh, stop it.
Please.
Stop the tape. So Stephen is an organizational behavior consultant who specializes in making sure that operational transformations go smoothly and show lasting results. There's a difference between just making it happen and making it happen in a way that lasts. And that's his specialty. He especially enjoys developing business leaders through his training and coaching programs, including, and I know Stephen through this, as a certified Sedona Method Coach. So if you need a coach to help you let go and uncover a deeper sense of unlimited possibilities, Stephen can help you out with that. He's worked with companies across many varied sectors and every imaginable scale, from helping startups raise the necessary capital to saving global behemoths tens of millions dollars. That's a lot.
Lots of money.
Lots of money. So Stephen's my personal note to Stephen is he loves dogs, but he hasn't had one for 30 years. So he's in a dog dearth.
Dog dearth.
And,
dog rally.
He's in dog rally.
You can say that. I don't quite know how that's possible, but yeah, it's been 30 years since I've had a dog. I love dogs.
But we should say we do have 2 awesome cats.
Yes.
Who take the place of that. Yeah.
They're around.
We're glad they're here to support you.
Yeah.
What I'd like to say about Stephen is that when I began to have time to talk with him, longer length conversations as a friend, the amount of data that he has in his files about the history of humanity, he's like a Rhodes Scholar. And are you a Rhodes Scholar?
No, I'm from Oxford, but
I said yes.
I've studied Rhodes a lot, but
know many roads.
Near Oxford. But he's like that to me. He's got this kind of wisdom that is multi-layered, from historical, humanity, science, math, and the wisdom of also awakening consciousness in humanity. So he's a wonderful friend to have. So that's my personal note about Stephen.
Yeah.
Right,
I think Stephen is one of the smartest people that I know, and the most heart-centered at the same time, which I think is such a beautiful and rare combination.
Yeah, that's true. I would say that Stephen's almost embarrassed at the love of his partner. Look,
Yeah.
All right, so you guys get to do me, and it better be good.
Yes.
Yeah, I know.
Gotta be good.
How do we follow that? David, the inventor of the rocket pack, as a.
I told you he knows history.
Yeah. David, it feels strange to read a bio of someone I know so well, but David has indeed worked in the field of awakening consciousness as a teacher and coach for organizations and individuals across 5 continents. You're working on Antarctica currently, aren't you?
Yeah.
I'm trying to get Antarctica into the fold here. For the last 30 years. And those organizations, since in the time I've known, have ranged from literally the United Nations to all sorts of different private sector organizations, including, I know you work with financial services people, hedge fund people and so forth, coaching them. I know you've worked with industrial research and development organizations too, very, very demanding environments, of course. And again, all different sized organizations, as well as those many, many private individuals. He's also an author. His most recent book is called The Ocean of Now, which I think is just one of the most beautiful book titles I've ever heard. And he's the rare individual who would actually be able to have you experience the ocean of now. And I'm not sure so many people know this about him. A lot of people know that David is a speaker. He's also a transformational performer, which is an absolutely unique thing that he brings to the table. He's done that at conferences and events worldwide. And on a personal note, so I'll come to that in a second. So on a personal note, so we know each other, as you may have gathered, from the Sedona Method world, and he's one of the very, very few now global instructors certified at that level. There's, I don't know how there's certainly fewer than a handful, I think, at this point, right? That remain, and uniquely qualified, therefore, to teach that worldwide.
And in my personal opinion, I think you're one of the best of all of them.
Yeah, and that's, and that's says a lot because of the extremely high caliber of everybody there.
They're all good. They're all very good. Yeah.
So, he is. The performing piece also makes David, I think, one of the very funniest people I've known, and funny in a very special way. Because, so to me, funniness is that's the universe speaking, because, there is humor is a form of cosmic love and cosmic unfolding. I think that's very wonderful. But it's also, the thing about David's humor is very, it's beyond gentle. It's very loving and healing and inclusive and wonderful. Mm-hmm. And, we hear so much about comedians now who are savage. He's often put in quotation marks, this savage humor. He savaged him. Oh, unbelievable, Destruction 100. And David's humor is creation 100.
Oh, wow.
I love that. Yes, that is so true. Yeah. Beautiful. It's very heartfelt and it just lifts you up, right? Yeah. I mean, there's like an uplift that you bring.
Thanks. Okay. You guys scored. That was good. Yeah.
All right.
That's good.
Take 2.
No, I'll leave that one in.
No. That's
creation 100.
Next scene.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Moving on.
Okay. So thank you all for that. And
you're very welcome.
So those of you that are watching, you know a little bit about background, and now we're just going to dive a little bit deeper into each of our views. So Sonja, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I wanted to start since I'm going to be talking about the universal and planetary positions and how that is connected to what we're currently experiencing. And I think that's sort of like a really nice overview of how we can kind of understand a little bit the energies and the connectivity between everything that's currently going on, right? And one of the things that I mentioned to my people already, that I, part of my online community, is that 2020 is a big year of change, because there's a lot of cycles, planetary cycles that are starting new. And they're not just small planetary cycles, they're large planetary cycles, like 20, 30-year cycles. And so because there's so many of them, that indicates, and obviously sometimes you can't really know as an astrologer how things play out exactly when you look at these big cycles, but what you do know is that when these big cycles happen, there's a new beginning. There's like a seeding of something new that will then last or will develop over a 20 or 30-year period. Right? And that's important for us to understand, that what we're doing currently in 2020 is we're seeding things that we're growing and building that will really change the history of humanity in a way.
When you say seeding things, paint a little bit more of that picture, for example.
So for example, one of the cycles that's happening right now is the Saturn-Pluto cycle in Capricorn. And the last time this Saturn-Pluto cycle began this is sort of like a 32 to 38 year cycle, was in October of 1982 in a different sign. But what we saw in 1982, because it was in Libra, which is a relationship-oriented sign, we had the AIDS epidemic at that time. And so there was something that got seeded around that time where we had to take a look at how we do relationships with each other. In what ways are we committed to each other? In what ways can we transform relationships? And because this was also very much, of course, connected to the to certain groups of people, right, that were impacted more than others, we had to take a look at, like, are these groups of people now being separated from society or reintegrated with society in a new way or in a different way?
So what I hear you saying is that when you say seeded, you're not just talking about the event, you're talking about seeding of a new way of consciousness that hopefully begins to grow.
Yes, exactly.
Wow. Gotcha.
A new sense of looking at things, or a new sense of consciousness, or moving with something.
Right.
And Saturn and Pluto, those two are heavy hitters. They're heavy hitter planets. Pluto is about complete transformation on an emotional level, right? It's about going deep into our unconscious, into our deepest, darkest places to unearth what needs to be made conscious and to transform that and to make it into something that's passionate about life, right? That we can, that we can embrace again. And Saturn is the planet or the energy around the truth of things. What is true? What works? What's realistic? What can we do here? What can we not do here? What do we need to discard? What do we need to look at more closely? Where do we need to be more committed, right? So those two planets together, they're very heavy hitters. There's very important stuff that needs to happen, right?
Yeah, you know, as you say that, Sonja, any one of the sentences you just said would be a dive deep sentence. The idea of looking at the truth of what needs to happen, looking at what we've been holding deep and need to let go of. So to me, what you're saying is this we're being all forced.
Yes.
By what's happening.
To let go of the old, so to speak, because Capricorn is very traditional.
Right.
The planet.
Right. But individually, we're being asked to do that because we're alone right now.
Yes.
So we have to look at our stuff.
Yes, we have to look at our stuff. And we have been, in a sense, we've been doing this now since 2017 when Saturn started moving into Capricorn. This cycle has sort of like already started to build, but it's only become exact in January of this year, right? So now that it's exact, it's like now we're ready to really start this new beginning, right? And in Capricorn, of course, it has a lot to do with being self-reliant and self-responsible. Has to do with being self-responsible.
Well, that's timely.
With really owning our authority, right? Like not projecting authority onto somebody else or not giving our authority away to somebody else, like political leaders or, people in our communities where we say, oh, like the doctors know what's right for us,
as you're speaking, Sonja, I only jumping in because it's fascinating to listen to you as an astrologer, but I want everybody to be really conscious as you're watching this. Everything that Sonja is saying is literally saying how we give our power to authority, even while we're alone now during the coronavirus, right, or at whatever period in history. We want somebody to save us, right? So we don't have that freedom now. We have to be self-responsible, her word.
Exactly. And that's what the coronavirus, in a sense, provides. So this virus is, you could see it as like an outer reflection of what helps us to actually get to that place of becoming more self-responsible and becoming more taking our authority back, and really slowing down. That's the other thing with Capricorn. Capricorn is a feminine sign, which says slow down.
Hello.
Slow down and take it one day at a time. Take it one step at a time. Do not miss, do not go into the future and try to, step over 10 steps, Stay present in the here and now. And of course, this virus is really inviting us to do that too, right? It's like, we got to be very present with how we are dealing with ourselves, with our environment, how we take care of ourselves. I mean, there's really this presence is very much demanded right now. Beautiful. And of course, there's other planetary placements that actually accentuate what this cycle is about currently at this time, with also Mars being in Capricorn and Jupiter being in Capricorn. So these things also accentuate what's happening right now. And then we have Mercury in Pisces, which gives us the opportunity to see the oneness, right? The oneness of what all of this is, how all of this is really showing that we're not separate from each other. Like something like a virus, it's invisible, right? Like invisible, and it's energy that kind of like can go anywhere, right? And so that shows us that we're completely, everything connects with everything.
What's beautiful, what you just said also is that it's forcing, we're not separate, but the irony is this circumstance is making us physically be separate, which is forcing us to find the connection that isn't based in where the bodies are.
Yes.
That's the deeper connection. It's forcing.
Yes.
It's sort of like it's an intelligence of its own, nature in the cosmos. You know what also I want to ask you, Sonja, maybe as we come to a close here for you, the idea of the cosmos, how you relate to astrology is not that astrology is making humans do things. It's more like this beautiful reflection so that we might be able to look at this time. I want you to correct me if I'm off or whatever. That we can look at these times, these major changes, earth changes, as a part of what the solar system is doing, the universe. And so if we look at it in that larger view, we don't feel as puny and like this is the end times of all life forever.
Yes. Thanks for bringing that up, David, because I personally see astrology very much as something that is a tool that supports us in understanding how we can align ourselves with the energies as they're inside of us and outside of us, right? Because what the planets are simply sort of like a reflection in the outside world of our own personal inner universe, because energy is everywhere, right? Energy is inside of us and outside of us. So you're really seeing a beautiful play of like, astrology is an interpretation of the planetary cycles. It's not saying that the planets are doing anything to us. It's just saying the planets represent something like archetypes, right? They're like archetypes that represent archetypes that are already living within us, because each person has all these archetypes within themselves as well.
Right.
And so that's how we can learn to align ourselves. So when I know, for example, that, this alignment is happening, all these planets in Capricorn right now, there's 5 planets in Capricorn. I know for myself, I cannot go full on speed with anything. It's not going to happen, because all these planets in Capricorn, they're going to slow me down. Even if I try to push or try to go fast, it's not going to work. So why not align myself with the energy, if I know that that's an energy that demands of me to slow down and be precise and be, looking at everything in a very realistic way. Why not align myself with that? Because then I'm not fighting it. I'm not fighting the energies. I'm not fighting myself.
Right. It's beautiful. Well, what a great segue for us to realize that slowing down is perfect. And
it really is. Yeah, it's a perfect segue for me.
Thank you, Sonja.
Yeah, thank you so
You're
much.
welcome.
Beautiful.
And in a way, our nearly 20 years together and 18 years of marriage has sort of trained me for this moment where I can flow quite nicely on from talking about Capricorn, actually. So,
he knows a lot about astrology, actually.
I just soak it up by osmosis, right? It's true. So, how does this apply for, well, I think the phrase slowing down, and the other Capricornian word, if you like, that I associate with Capricorn is structure, right?
Yes.
Structure. Sort of getting down to the skeleton of the thing, to getting down to the bones of the thing, and then looking deeper, how does that actually work? And we an expression we used when we were thinking about doing this call was deep work, which I know you're going to speak about too, David. But this is indeed a perfect time for business people too, to sort of slow down a little bit. They're forced to slow down. And I think that there's going to be some surprising realizations for, and I'm going to speak not only to business owners, but to anybody really who manages or leads anybody at work. Even if you're just managing yourself, this is still relevant. But, one thing I found over the years is that a lot of businesses are not very good at measuring the important things. And that's very important because great Peter Drucker, the management consultant of the manager, he's the original, if you like, a management consultant. He said, you can't manage what you don't measure. And a lot of businesses just have really no idea what's happening on a certainly not a day-to-day basis, necessarily even a month-to-month basis. They're totaling up the numbers halfway through the following month, and by then it's too late, right? It's all just lagging indicators. So slowing down here, I think, can take an important form, which is to say, what could we, and more importantly, perhaps even what, and I don't really like the word should, but it fits here. What should we be measuring here at work? Because I imagine most people who are watching this hopefully you still are employed or still have an income coming in, most likely you're working from home right now, which the three of us we were doing back in 2008, right? And even before that. But one thing you'll probably notice when you start working from home is either how little you do in a day-to-day operation of the company you work for or own, or how much. There's probably not much middle ground there. The reason for that is that when you look at the productivity of a typical worker, something like 80% of the value is typically created by 20% of the workers. So if you're that 20%, you're probably getting slammed with work. If you're really valuable and indispensable, you are probably choked because
the people that take responsibility.
Right, exactly.
That are committed.
Capricornian thing again, right? That people who take responsibility, who are committed, who are showing up, trying to be indispensable every day, they are going to get really loaded down with work right now. And the people who aren't creating much value, and it's good here to be honest and as Sonja said, reflective. There's a great Japanese word, hansai, which means self-reflection, it's like a self-auditing. If you're one of those people who's not providing much value during the day, this is going to be starkly apparent at this point. You're going to show up to your laptop at 11 a.m. in your robe and probably be done with meaningful work by about 12:30 in the afternoon. About 15% of your day you can probably use and get everything done. What you get done in that hour and a half might be exceptionally valuable. It might be what keeps the lights on, and that's fine if it is. But if it isn't, then now might be a good time to be honest with yourself and say, hey, what do I really want to contribute here? Am I working in the right field? Do I like what I do? Is it valuable? Because, this is going to become, starkly apparent to you. Here's my suggestion. If you are a boss, it sounds a bit cold-blooded, but start measuring things. What would you like to measure here? Is if you have someone doing accounts receivables for you, what's your aging on those accounts receivable? And that just means people owe you money. How long does it take from shipping the product or providing the service to getting paid? You want that period to be as short as possible. So sit back, reflect. What should you be measuring here? What's critical here? That's going to lead you on to asking what behaviors, what observable things that people do actually generate those results. And that's a deeper cut because now you're getting into leading indicators. What I'm saying here, I guess, is that this is a chance to look at the structure of your enterprise, whether you're an owner or a worker or an investor. How does this thing actually go about creating value on a day-to-day basis? What is the customer actually glad they paid for? And what was included in there that wasn't all that valuable? It's
interesting, Stephen, what you're saying is parallel to the human personal journey, right? Because we're forced to take stock, right? Yeah. Not just at our workplace, but internally, our emotions, our relationship with spouses, children, our nature, our bodies. We have to take stock. We have to assess.
How are we actually connecting to ourselves too?
Ultimately
I
to
think
ourselves.
The ultimate question is like, how are we connecting to ourselves in a time where we're feeling the pressure, right? Because Capricorn can be a lot of pressure, especially the way that it's lined up with this many planets. We're feeling this tremendous sense of challenged. It's a challenging time, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And we're being forced to, and the idea that I was exploring here, Stephen, was this idea that you're asking as a business owner, you have a larger footprint than an individual who's just looking at their own self, body, emotions, relationship to nature and spouse and children. So you're kind of stating a parallel. We're all being asked in whatever role we play, business or personal, to slow down and assess and measure what's important. For an example, I have an apartment I moved into back in September, and I have many things that I like, but I still don't have curtains for my windows and a carpet for my living room area, and not the chair that I want to have. And all those things suddenly, to me, because of what's going on, suddenly I could care less in this moment.
Right.
I will hope that time comes, but if it doesn't, I'm let go of my attachment to it as really important.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like that's what you're implying is this.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a very, very well put, is to let go of the illusion of how this enterprise or even how your life has been running.
Yeah, illusion and ignorance, not
yes,
knowing.
Yeah. Well, one thing that you mentioned, I mentioned in my bio there, it says I love to work with leaders I'll drill down on that a tiny bit. My favorite kind of person to work with is actually someone who's has insufficient leadership capability currently, right? And you often find that with subject matter experts, certified financial analysts, engineers, right? There might be some real quiet Indian lady in the back of the room who's not getting heard because a real tall guy at the front with executive hair sounds and looks really good and looks like a leader. So they must know what they're talking about. They're not really armed with facts, just opinions, and they're good at getting their opinions through committees and so forth. So letting go of that illusion of leadership, which is based around charisma, can be even dangerous at times if you take it to extremes. We can all think of a historical leader or two that was very charismatic, that Rick Taps to have it, right? So letting go of that illusion of what it is to be a leader, and instead embracing, if you like, a very Capricornian, very structured view of reality in which we ask for numbers. We can't always get them, but we try and get data when we can and make decisions together based on that in a very deliberative way. You know, starting with one thing I can recommend to everybody right now is if there's a problem in your world, take a minute here now and define the problem. Get a proper problem statement. What's the impact? Where is it being felt? By who? For how long? How much does it cost? Do it for something in your own life first of all right now, and then learn to scale up. So one of the most underrated skills in business is being able to define problems clearly and well. The solution almost floats up out of a well-defined.
You know, it's almost like you're translating the word problem to issue. What's the issue? What are the defining factors of it? As opposed to consciously saying problem, problem, problem. Oh my God.
Oh, absolutely.
Clear it out.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, in my field, we'll sometimes say opportunity even. And it's not just a feel-good thing. It's like, you know, every issue is an opportunity. Funny, my mom, of all people, she has multiple sclerosis and stage 4 cancer, and she's in the UK under complete lockdown. And, you know, she was talking about how restaurants are moving to delivering food more and more. And that's not been as much of a thing as in the UK as say it was for us being New Yorkers all those years, right? We took that for granted. But she said, you know, business opportunities currently abound. There is a disruption going on, and business opportunities abound. And in fact, with massive levels of government action we're seeing, windfall profits are almost always preceded by some sort of government action. So if you can figure out where that's going to lie, a lot of people are going to get very, very wealthy. And again, that sounds cold-blooded.
Well, I think it has to do with adaptability, right? Because
absolutely.
The truth of the matter is any situation that's challenging requires of us to be adaptable. And in order to be adaptable, we have to be present to what is so, rather than trying to wish for it to be the same way as it was, or for wish for it to be different than it could be. Yeah. You know, we need to be present to what is so currently, accept that and adapt to it, right? Yeah. As much as we can.
Yeah. And in business, being interested in the numbers, as well as the soft skills pieces, don't get me wrong, that's still important, but being interested in the numbers that's the subset of that. You know, I think survival of the fittest, we often think of, you know, people who go running every day, you know, who have very low body fat. And that's not really what that means, actually. Fittest is about best fit. That's what Darwin meant. He meant the best fitted for that environment. And so as humans, we are incredibly adaptable, and we have foresight too. So
when you say, Stephen, I have to pause you there. So you define that, if you would, better. So how I understand, I think you mean it, fitted, meaning the ability to fit. Yes. Not just because otherwise, if you're not fitted for this, you can't adapt because you're not fit and it's over. But you're proposing the adaptability.
If you're a bird and someone puts a bag of walnuts behind a hole in a fence, a goofy example here, an unrealistic example.
You can be goofy, it's okay.
Right, okay. So a bird with a longer beak gets more nuts, right? That bird is literally a sort of a better fit for that sized hole in the fence, right? Well, humans are, everybody says this sooner or later, right, in every field. Humans are unique amongst the animals in that we can go and get a saw and cut a bigger hole. We can say, I don't like walnuts. I'll go and have avocados instead. And I'm going to, in fact, grow avocados because I think the market for avocados is going to really take off, you know. So that's what survival of the fittest means. For a human, it's the ability precisely to adapt and make the most of. issues, these opportunities.
Situation.
It reminds me of what you said when we were having the conversation a few days ago, Stephen, about, would you speak about Newton?
Yeah, so, and I don't want to, inject the word plague into this conversation without saying that something with a 2% mortality rate so far probably doesn't rise to the level of a pestilence. But here we are, we're using actually a very, very ancient strategy for surviving pandemics, epidemic disease, which is to withdraw. One nice thing about these days is that it used to be only really the wealthy that could go to their country estates and escape the pestilence that would decimate the cities, right? But some incredibly important work some really, really radically revolutionary work has been done during these withdrawals from pandemics. Now, if you're surrounded by 4 children running around screaming, you're like, he's not surely going to say what he's about to say, and yes, I am. So if you are surrounded by 4 screaming children, this might just be an opportunity to do some deep beingness there with your family. That may be what this opportunity is providing to you. But I'll just say this, so Isaac Newton, probably one of the most important humans who ever lived in terms of having created wealth and abundance for people. The calculus, his work on gravitation, the laws of motion and so forth, just can't really be overstated, So he did a lot of his most important work while away from Cambridge, where he was teaching and based, at his country home. He retreated from Cambridge because there was a plague outbreak, threatened or actual, I think. So it gave him time to reflect and write letters to people, took him out of his usual run-of-the-mill thing where he would sort of insult people in letters, and he sat down at his desk and did the hard thinking. Another example, Boccaccio, Italian author in the 1350s, wrote a book called The Decameron, which was sort of a satirical take on the Ten Commandments. And this is the first time that he gave voice to this merchant class, this urban, sophisticated, critically thinking merchant class, and which he contrasted against sort of like these rude rural types that he was surrounded by. Well, so why is this a big deal? Well, because that book it's one of the first real novels, if you like, sort of like an Arabian Nights kind of a thing. Made a lot of fun out of the church, which was not the done thing back then, and also influenced people like Geoffrey Chaucer with his Canterbury Tales and so forth. This is just a hugely influential book. It's the chrysalis, it's the seed for a great, perhaps arguably the majority of Western literary art since. And these are just 2 examples of like monumentally important work that were done by people who were forced to withdraw. The Decameron is actually literally about some young noblemen and women who were trapped in a palazzo. Really, I recommend it, actually, an amazing read. So as
a segue for that, Stephen, after you've laid out some input for people both in the business realm and I'd like to translate what you said into the very personal realm. Do you want to add anything, or you feel complete?
No, I think I'd just like to say, look at what you have right in front of you. You have some kind of device here. If you can type things, that means you can write. If you can write these days, that means you can be published. If you can be published these days, it means you can reach a global audience. That's just one example here of ways you can use this to really transform your career and your life. My mom is an advanced guard for this. So as I mentioned before, she's had MS now going on nearly 30 years. She's been fighting cancer 6-7 years. It came back recently. She's been stage 4 headed up for 2 years. My mom is just titanium bulletproof lady. But in that time, she graduated from college at age 56, published her first novel, and is about to publish her second, and is in touch with the world through the internet. My mom should really be doing a seminar. But that's just
on what it means to be at home all the time. And
in her words,
her
very politically incorrect term, my mom always says, I'm an old cripple. That's her joking British way of talking about her situation. But look at the reach that she has.
Right.
I mean,
with the technology that we have these days, I think it's important to differentiate between social distancing and physical distancing, right?
Yeah.
Because it's really about that we can still stay connected. I mean,
Right.
all the time if we want to, but at the same time, it's also important to go within, right?
Right.
It is important to go within and get in touch with ourselves and really understand, how do I feel? What do I know? What do I already know without anybody needing to tell me, or without, having to watch the news, or without having to, look at the outside world? What's already inside of me? Because there's this whole universe that's there, that's smart, that's intelligent. Your body knows so much. Your feeling body knows so much, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're just so conditioned to be so attached to knowing things in our head, right? Or mentally problem solving things, that we sometimes negate or don't pay attention to the other stuff that's there, which there's so much. This
so much.
is such a resource, right? I mean,
Yeah.
each one of us has such a resource, right?
Yeah, a resource for all of those things, and ultimately the only home to live in, right? This is the perfect segue, I think, for
Yes.
my work, which is about the personal exploration. But I want to say to you, Stephen, the translation or the bridge from what you said into what I'm going to address here, which is how we are impacted and what we deal with, how we deal with our internal realm that we're forced to look at. And that's what I'm interested in. But the bridge is from when you said these men, and probably women too, but these people came up with inventions because they were forced to be focused on a time away from the norm of external noise and all of their patterned ways of being.
Mm.
So that in those inventions happen. So what I'm inviting everyone that's looking at these cameras and this screen to do, whether it's a tablet or phone or computer, laptop, is to reflect on what you're hearing here as the opportunity. We've gone altitude, literally cosmos, to structural almost, the business, the institutional, right? Down now into you. And you as a person you are literally the cosmos. You have the same mineral content as Mars, basically, just different spectrums. You're basically made of stardust. It's not just a beautiful phrase by Shakespeare. I think it was Shakespeare, right, Stephen? You're a stardust.
We are such things as
Stars are made of.
Yeah.
Right? We are such things as stars are made of. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we are that.
Yeah.
It's not a poetic thing in a book. You are literally dust of the cosmos. We could break down and on the earth, one of the things I read long ago, and I've always been searching to refine the source of it. So if anybody, whoever sees this, can text me or email me the answer, I'd love it. But I read once that if the human body were broken down to its mineral content, the closest item in nature that we would be closest to would be a tree. So our mineral content is closest in terms of items in nature to the tree.
I didn't know that, and I love trees, so that's
yeah,
really interesting.
Makes sense. They're your family, right?
Yeah.
So I think of us as a shake and bake. You add 70 to 80% water, and you have a walking tree.
Oops.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So we are literally nature. And so this spectrum of the cosmos and astrology, the structures of institutions that are outpicturings of our thoughts and our brains and our creativity, now coming down into, we don't have any of those available, except through the internet, which is in a sense virtual compared to our direct real experience, right? So we can have a virtual experience with everyone, but even this doesn't guarantee I feel connected to Stephen and Sonja.
Right.
Seeing them doesn't guarantee that. Where is it guaranteed? It's guaranteed only in here.
Yeah.
So how do we access that? So now, probably if you're watching this, unless you're watching this a long time after the isolation was happening, you're self-quarantining. And so we're self-sheltering, home sheltering. And so you're probably alone much of the time. Illinois just declared their quarantine. No one could go out except to do basic things, groceries, gas, stuff, walking in nature.
Yeah.
But so now it's official, right? I'm not supposed to leave my apartment.
Yeah.
So how do I feel about being home with myself?
Right.
That's the question.
Mm-hmm.
And there are various ways to address it, right? What I like to say is a few things. One is, I believe we're existing on levels: mental layer, thoughts, reflection, contemplation about life, thought, right? A lot of neocortex, frontal cortex stuff in the brain. Then we have the emotional layer, which isn't really rational or logical, and more kinesthetic and physiological, neurological activity, a lot of patterned. But then there's another layer, which is the heart, and there's a layer beneath that. The heart is the expression of the deeper layer, but the heart is the earnest part, the part where we can have emotions like sad at the loss of someone, tender-hearted at the loss of a life that we may never have now, letting go of our future made plans.
Yeah.
Right? There's a sadness that can come.
Sure.
That's different than the emotions above it, which are afraid of the dangerous world because my childhood was a dangerous world, where we're projecting something personal upon the external realm that isn't even about the external realm in its origin. So we have the opportunity to really assess, what am I existing from? Just thinking, always removed from my heart, my emotions, mostly emotional, removed from any capacity to reflect.
Mm-hmm.
Our heart, where we're pretty quiet in general, but sad, because it's sad.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the fourth realm. And by the way, the heart is where I can connect with you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And even the people who are watching, who I don't ever know, some of you. I feel a deep sense of connection with you. Anybody looking at this screen. I don't mean just because David does. I mean because we are literally in this together. We have no choice.
Yeah.
So I feel connected to every set of eyes that's looking at this screen right now at any era, this year, next year, 10 years from now. Because time even drops away in this place of the heart. I call it the heart with no distance. So that's the third layer. But the fourth layer is not really a layer. The fourth is the origin of all other layers. The fourth is where you go when you feel a stillness or a quiet of the mind, where there's no time and no space, even sometimes no body. I mean, no physical body. Your senses drop away. And it's not an abstract top of the mountain enlightenment phase. It's the accessing your nature, which is prior to your form, and which permeates your form and gives life to your form, your body. But it's a sense of being that is not bound by or imprisoned by the physical realm. That's the fourth. And I can't even call it a layer, because it's more than a layer. It's more like once you go down that far, you notice it's that in which everything else, the other layers, are appearing.
Everything.
Right.
Yeah.
So the question that I have for people during this time of the coronavirus and being isolated and looking at life right now from your perspective, and you may be isolated, like Stephen said, with your kids running around, and you may even have a hard time watching this because you have a lot going on in your house. But there's still this self-reflective capacity you will have, whether that's your circumstance or you're home alone a lot. So this capacity, so everybody do something with me. I'm going to introduce something I'm going to introduce two tools for you to take with you for the rest of your life, much less right now. The first is a kind of breath, which is an ancient breath, which switches your fight and flight mechanism to the parasympathetic or the rest and digest. And it involves two things: nasal breathing only, and there is pranayama or yogic breathing, which includes the mouth, and they're all valuable. But this is specific. So it includes nasal breathing and includes holding your breath, because a lot happens in those two things. Nasal breathing, there's a gas in the nasal cavities called nitric oxide, which is a relaxant. So when you breathe through your nose, you're sending nitric, it's like a little gas. It says, incoming, incoming, everybody out. The nitric oxide jumps onto the air, and the air goes into your lungs and your heart, your nerve, your circulatory system. Do you know that you have miles of circulatory system? That means the capillaries that come into here, there's trillions in the end, all throughout your body, capillaries, almost the level of the size of a cell. You're made basically of a circulatory structure. And so if you melted everything except for the circulation system, you'd still be standing. That's how much of a body you have. So when I breathe nitric oxide in, the brain says, okay, you guys do your job. They go, they jump into the blood and they travel into the circulatory system and they tell your vessels to open.
Right.
And when your blood vessels open, you have more oxygen, more nutrients. And when you have those, you get healthier.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just if you breathe through the nose. Mm-hmm. There are a majority of Americans and Westerners who breathe through the mouth. And the problem with the mouth is it's associated by the brain with fight or flight.
Ah.
So even without knowing it, if you're breathing like this, you're telling the nervous system to be on fight or flight.
It's very cute.
Thank you. Thank you. Right? The breathing is a remote control for the brain.
Right.
So if you, with conscious breathing, breathe through your nose, then you're giving it the relaxant. The other thing is if you breathe from your belly, the diaphragm, in the bottom half of your lungs, there's more alveoli, which are the little tiny sacs that oxygen goes through and carbon dioxide goes into to go out again. And the oxygen goes into the blood cells. The bottom half of your lungs is where most of those are. Mm. And the majority of capillaries going to your bloodstream are in the bottom of your lungs. So if I'm doing this, they call it vacant space. Oxygen goes in, but it goes back out without being used. Mm-hmm. So look at all the ways that we're not supporting our well-being. So in slow nose breathing and through the belly brings oxygen down to where it can be used, etc. So this breath is called box breathing, or in Sanskrit, it's called samavriti, which means same wave. Mm-hmm. So we breathe in, we hold, we breathe out, we hold, we breathe in, we hold. You do that a minimum of 4 times. And you'll feel the difference because your nervous system just got the signal. Switch. And you go into a different relaxed state and cortisol clears from your brain.
Yeah, breathing is so powerful.
It is, but specific types of breathing. When people say, just take a big breath, it's not exactly enough. It helps, but it's not enough. So everybody with me, do one thing first. Breathe in, blow air out. You're exhaling air in the lungs. Now breathe through the nose for 4 seconds. In, 2, 3, 4, and hold, gently relax the shoulders. 3, 4. Exhale through the nose. 2, 3, 4, and hold. 3. And one more on your own. In. Out. Hold. Now take a full breath, fill your lungs, let out a sigh. That was maybe 60 seconds, more like 30.
Felt good.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice, huh?
Yeah, it's nice.
It's a way of bringing you back to center.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's not just, hey, do this to relax.
Yeah.
All of this is about bringing your attention back to the present moment and not in the external realm. Yeah. Even the coronavirus, COVID-19. In this present moment, we have to learn to be present. So the other thing to look at is your emotions. Yeah. So if you have fear, grief, anticipation, anxiety, loneliness, restlessness, these are all in the realm of the emotions. So I'm going to give you another trick. There's a part of you that knows what isn't that. In other words, you know what restful feels like. You know what the opposite of fear feels like when you've had confidence. In your neural system, you know what those are. The opposite of fear, anxiety, restlessness, boredom. So you know what they are. So I'm going to ask you 2 questions. And Stephen and Sonja, you guys know this. So I'm really talking to everyone at home. In the Sedona method, there's a technique called holistic releasing. And it's basically telling the brain to move out of the orientation of only half of a full paradigm. And the full paradigm is where you find peace by allowing both. So peace is only found not by running from half, but by including the whole.
Second.
That's a great description of
That's
the
nice.
holistic release. I never heard that way.
Like the yin and the yang.
That's perfect.
Yeah. Instead of running from one, allowing both is what allows peace.
Yeah.
The reason? Because the only thing that can allow peace is your nature. your unlimited welcoming nature. So if you do that, you've become or experienced your truer nature. So it's not like I do that and I become this. When you do that, you're acknowledging what you are to be able to do that, which is the more self-knowing, open, spacious, wider sense of self.
Right.
So everybody pick. So Stephen or Sonia, you can do this, but everyone at home as well. Pick an emotion that the coronavirus is stirring up, or all of this is stirring up for you the most. Whatever it is. Now, if you be willing, allow your body to have just a sense of it. You may have more than a sense, but just in this moment, a sense. And now, take a gentle breath in, gentle breath out. Can you just acknowledge or welcome that emotion, the fear, the anxiety, whatever it is? Just acknowledge its presence. You don't have to like it. You're not indulging in it. Just allow or welcome that it exists. Now, the opposite of it, can you allow your memory, your banks, your file system, just to remember that the other half exists, just for a moment? You don't have to feel it or sense it or believe in it. Just know it exists, because it does. Now I'm going to go back and forth. Can you allow the emotion, the fear, the anxiety, whatever it is for you, to be here as much as it is? And now, can you be open to accessing part of you that knows the opposite, just for a moment? And can you allow your life to be run by this coronavirus as much as it seems? And can you be open to the possibility that your life is still your life? It is yours. It rests within you as best you can. And you're run by the virus as much as it seems. And you still have your life. It's yours. It's not owned by anything or anyone in this moment, as best you can. Okay, good. So I would assume that for some of you, yes, we're going to take a break, and Sonia and Stephen are going to take a nap. And but just check in. Just check in. How does the body feel after doing the holistic releasing or the recognition? You can do those two tools at any time.
Relaxed, and I think the yawning is part of that, relaxation of like.
Release.
Yeah, it is. Yawning is one of the ways we release. So while you're home, recognize. I will just close with this. Recognize that the humanness of your being is okay. It's just the practice of remembering that there is a you that's aware of it. The you that's able to love still. Reaching out to your own being, your own presence, your own hot baths, your reading when you didn't have time before, your walking to get fresh air, your love of your spouse. People you haven't spoken to in a while, call them, tell them you love them. Let love or presence be awake and active, so that when you have emotions, they don't have to take you over as much. So that's my advice and my loving invitation to everyone that's watching this. So
that's beautiful. Thank you so much, David. That was really beautiful. Yeah.
There's a friend of mine who wrote something, and I feel like there's value in it. And I wonder if you'd be okay if I read it.
Yeah, please.
Okay. His name is Jeff Foster, and he's on Facebook. And if you like this, but maybe this can aim towards our close of the talk. This is called "None of Us Are Immune." It's going to be okay. It really is. We'll face this situation together with love, humor, and patience. We will weep together. We will laugh together. We'll discover togetherness in our apartness. And the worst of it will end one day. And we will have learned so much by then. We will now be called to face very difficult feelings inside of us: fear, grief, the loss of an old way of life, our devastated plans. We'll learn to face ourselves. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, nowhere to go except within. A sacred quarantine. We'll learn to face our boredom, restlessness, the part of us that wants to be somewhere else, with someone else, doing something else, having another life experience in some other now. We will let go of the wonderful future we'd planned. We'll let the fantasy future die and release it and grieve it. We'll return to the solidity and warmth of the present. We'll make the present into our home. We'll begin again here, build a house, a new house on new soil. We'll explore a new way of life, strange at first, but full of possibility, slower, kinder, quieter. We'll talk to each other honestly about death and life and impermanence and how we feel about all the changes that have come to us and our loved ones. We will learn to value life a little more. Yes, perhaps we will learn to value life a little more and live with our hearts cracked slightly open to the elements and lean into uncertainty and find our salvation there. None of us are immune to change, to rupture, to the shattering of old familiar forms. This is the way of things. And this has always been the way of things. From this perspective, nothing has gone wrong. Crisis simply means turning point. In Greek, that's correct. That's what it means.
Yes. Yes.
Crisis simply means turning point. And none of us are immune from the turning. The breaking of the old makes way for the birth of the new. It's always been this way. Love, humor, patience. With these things, we will come through, stronger than before, renewed, ready.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
So from you guys, from your hearts, how would you like to bring to a close our time together?
Well, I just want to say that, I feel that this is the beginning of a new era. I feel that this year is our turning point. 2020 is our turning point. And turning points are difficult because you can't see around the corner. It's like, I see it like this, right? It's like a boom, boom, like you're going around a corner. And before you get to the tippy point of the corner, you don't see what's around the corner. So I think it's really us needing to trust. I think trust plays a huge part. And trust is, we can trust through going within and really getting connected to ourselves and our intuitiveness, the universe, and trust is going to be a big one, to just trust that the cycles are exactly what they need to be, that we are exactly where we need to be, that we're experiencing exactly what we need to be, that the present moment is exactly what it needs to be, and that we go from there, right? That the future gets created from this present moment and from the next, and being really present to that.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thanks.
I think I'd just like to say that I love you both very much.
Oh.
My dear friend and my beloved wife. That's it.
From the heart. I have nothing to add. The poem said a lot. We've said a lot in this hour together. I know we, all three of us, hope that whoever's watching this gets inspired to go within, to feel what it feels like to have a solidity of self, even amidst the chaotic realm of change in the world. At whatever era you're watching this, while the coronavirus is here and beyond it, may this give you strength to know where your real strength lies and has always lied. lay or lied.
And actually, there's one last thing I want to mention, which is with Pluto, it is a lot about trust and surrender. You know, surrendering to the higher will of something that's bigger than us, right? Because these cycles, they are bigger than us. They are collective cycles that each one of us is a part of right now. It's not just an individual cycle, it's a collective cycle.
Yeah.
To surrender to that, this energy that's moving through us right now collectively is going to take us to where we need to go as a society or as a world, you know, as on this planet.
The first step of adapting is to say it is this. It's not what I wish it would to be.
Right. It is this.
It is indeed this.
It is not.
And the beautiful way of the full application of that, I believe, is that means surrender. Even if you have emotions and feelings, allow them.
Yeah.
Let's see them in the context.
Yeah.
A part of the movement of the ocean, not as a final end state that you have to battle.
Yeah.
Right.
Energy moving is the key. You know, maybe we can end with this, that there is a saying, the ocean is not in, the drop is not in the ocean. The ocean is the drop. The ocean is in the drop. Every drop is the entirety.
The ocean, yes.
So it's water. It's the essence of the totality. So each of us are not separate drops. We are the ocean. So the ocean includes the cosmos and the planets and the plants and your cats and people's
all living beings.
all living alive beings, all of life. So let's end with the surrender doesn't mean lie down and be in apathy. It means let go of resisting and pushing back so hard.
Absolutely, yes.
Right.
It's about letting go of control.
Wanting
Control.
believing,
Wanting control. Yes.
trying to control the entire universe.
Trying to control something that's not controllable.
Right.
Yeah,
That's the letting go.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. Yeah.
It's okay. Wow. All right. So
All right. Much love to you, David. And thanks for making this happen between the three of us.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful.
Yeah, it's lovely.
my pleasure. My pleasure to be with you and co-create. In Buddhism, they have a
Last thing I do want to say is that if anybody's interested in connecting with David or with Stephen or with me, then there will be bios available underneath the video that, you know, we'll talk about each one of us, so you can, you know, see how to contact
email
us.
Addresses and things like that.
Email addresses and websites or whatever, right?
Yeah, and if this is on YouTube, like it. YouTube likes liking. So
As the saying goes, hit like and subscribe. Seems like it's another era now, but yeah, hit like and subscribe.
All that stuff. So I know all three of us send a lot of love to those of you who are watching, and I too, Stephen. I love both of you guys too very much.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Until next time.
Until next time. Bye.
Bye for
Bye.
now.